One second. See if you can see my camera. Brilliant, I'm there. So yeah, welcome to the Vizlib release webinar. I'm very excited to welcome you to another call. It's the first one in this year, so we actually didn't do one in January because of the break. Lots of people were away, and we didn't have much to show because we obviously some of our developers took holidays as well. However, back to business, back live here. You can see also different offices, so the background has changed, but very excited to welcome you here today to show you what's the latest and greatest, a couple of news around Vizlib, some interesting stuff, but also roadmap, what's coming next, what is stuff that we're currently working on, but also give you a little bit of a glimpse of 2019, where we want to end up eventually by the end of this year. So just so you know, the session is recorded. It'll be put up on YouTube after the call. You have the ability to ask questions. So we have here at the right-hand side of the system of the tool, there's a questions area. You just keep firing them. We have a team of Vizlib on the call who'll be able to answer them. But also at the end of this call, there will be a Q&A, so I can discuss some of the questions that you might have in more detail. Right, so I'll get started. We have a lot of exciting stuff to be talking about today. Some Vizlib news, not too insignificant, of course, but very excited to share to you the Vizlib combo chart live in action, which has been released, I think, in January, but also a new extension not yet out there will be released just right after the call, which is the Vizlib slider, another control component, and some very important updates that we have done on the Vizlib table, and of course the roadmap. To make things a bit interactive today, we have decided to include more people from the Vizlib team to show you the slider and the Vizlib table respectively. So we have Pierre Spatula on the call, who's a Vizlib product architect, and David Alcobero, who you know, Vizlib's CTO, who'll be able to walk you through some of these new features. So to make it a little bit more interesting, you know, for those of you who are bored of hearing my voice all the time, I think this will be very welcomed. But I'll cover the news. So what has been changing at Vizlib? So first of all, as always, we have new people who have joined the team, and this time here in London, Pierce Batchelor, who is a product architect, and Pierce will work on a Vizlib library. He'll work on prioritizing the exercises, working on new features, and working together with the team in Poland to ensure that we are ultimately keeping pace with the release cycle that we have right now. I'll let Pierce introduce himself very quickly. Pierce, you got the floor. One second, voice. One second, we're trying to do voice here. While we're figuring that out, at the same time, also our first US-based employee, Jonathan Israel, has joined us. Some of you already have worked with him in the past, so you are familiar. You know, he has been working with Click, but also with one of the elite consultancy resellers. Jonathan, perhaps some words from you.
Yep, good morning. Thank you, Martin. Happy to join the team, and good morning to those folks here in the US. And I'm absolutely excited to join the team, and you'll be hearing from me on a more regular basis. But I know getting Martin being 5 or sometimes 8 hours ahead of your schedules can sometimes be challenging. So my contact details will be all over the place, but looking forward to hearing how you guys are using the Vizlib library extensions. And Martin will share some more on some of the upcoming events for us, but looking forward to meeting all of you. Please don't feel shy to come up, introduce yourself, and looking forward to speaking with you all soon. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I think we now got sound, and Pierce will be able to introduce himself, presented on the next webinar. Yeah, around news now, one thing that Jonathan just mentioned and is actually quite important is that we'll be sponsoring the Financial Services Summit of Click in March 2019. So Vizlib is effectively coming to New York City. It's a one-day event. It's very exciting. It's focused predominantly around financial services. So risk management, P&L reporting, typical challenges that investment banks, for example, have. And we'll be sponsoring the event. It's a one-day event. Really recommend you should show up. There are a couple of interesting speakers attending from Click. Mike Capone himself will be there as well. So actually quite big prominence within the Click community on site, as well as Vizlib. Myself will be there with Jonathan. And it's free to attend, but space is limited, so do sign up in time. And one thing I wanted to mention is that obviously Vizlib will be on site, we'll be in New York, and I'll personally will be there for the whole week. And the event is just on Thursday, so we have the rest of the days free, and I'll be more than happy to come pay you a visit. So for some of you customers, we already, I think we're already in touch, so we'll be meeting you at your offices in New Jersey, for example, or also in Manhattan. Yeah, we're more than happy to meet you in person. So if you have a free schedule, you have a free time, just give me a ping and we'll come around, say hi in person. So aside from obviously the FinServe Summit in March, we also will be sponsoring Vizlib Click Qonnections in 2019. So this year, it's happening in Dallas, in Texas, in May, mid of May. I think some of you, if not the majority of the school, will be there on site. We're very, very excited because last year we were just an exhibitor. So, the smallest level of sponsorship, and we've now grown into the second highest level of sponsorship. With a really, really big booth. We will be also sponsoring a general session. We'll have some videos going around, but more importantly, we'll be there with a lot of people, 5, 6, 7 Vizlibbers or more, to meet you in person, to walk you through our extensions, to answer any questions you might have, of course, as always, and more importantly, to hang around, right? Have a beer, grab a coffee, see, meet, and it's very, very interesting, working with all of you, but let's make those personal. So come say hi to us if you're around at Qonnections, and we'll be at the big stand here at the very right hand side. So we got a nice space with a lot of space around us, so you won't be able to miss us. And there's a couple of chairs there as well to sit down. Do say hi. Let's use this opportunity. And yeah, very, very excited about Dallas as well. I've never been to there before. So these are exciting news, but yeah. Taking further, now let's talk about the interesting stuff around the latest updates, right? Most of you have been following our cycles of our social media posts, but also our Vizlib blog posts that are being posted regularly. So you must be familiar with some of them, but just in case you missed some of the things that have been released, been worked on, we hopefully can cover these things here in a very quick glance, such as the Vizlib combo chart. Very excited. That has been released, and that was released mid of January. We had this extension going on for a long while on our plans. It has been very frequently requested. Lots of people have requirements around combo charts, being able to combine different kind of metrics to make as lines, as bars. Relatively standard stuff, if you ask me, but stuff that ultimately people did cry to us, Vizlib, can you release something in that direction? And I think we had a couple of polls going in the past webinars where you voted the combo chart to be the next most important extension to be released. So that's out there. As always, very, very customizable, very rich in styling options. And I'll just jump right to it and show it you the combo chart in action. So, right, let's do consumer sales or sales discovery. Right, so as always, the Vizlib combo chart will appear on the left-hand side for those of you who have already installed it. If not, bear in mind, you need to download the package from our website. So whenever we release a new extension, it's not automatically available, and you need to download it as a one-off time. However, whenever you're on auto update, you will be able to then use and get the latest versions. Now, the way the combo chart works is we have for now limited it to one dimension, and you can define as many metrics as you want. So let's define here region name, and then you can go through a selection of various metrics such as number of customers. And you will see and recognize that it is very, very similar to the bar chart. So to make sure that our that our formatting and settings, but also the property panel is consistent between our extensions, we inherited lots of bar chart functionality in our combo chart, right? So you don't have to learn a new object from scratch. It's basically very, very similar. However, of course, with many more additional options. So I'm adding just now number of customers, and then I can choose a different metric such as sales. And you see immediately, sales and number of customers are kind of off because one metric is higher than the other. So you should typically take sales and then plot it against the right-hand side. And then you can take another metric such as sales goal and plot it as well on the right-hand side. And here you can immediately see, sales goal in red and sales as a line chart. Now this is a little bit confusing. So let's make sure that all the sales are bars and the number of customers is displayed as a line chart. So go back here to number of customers. We select this here, and you'll see that's now popped up as a line. We'll go into sales to make sure that this is a bar chart now. And right, here we go, right? We have the actual sales in gray and the sales goal in red next to it. And then the number of customers in the various regions plotted as a line chart. And now the interesting thing is you can of course have combined bars with line charts. And let's say we want to make the line width a little bit larger here, and we want to change the data point to a cross, make it a little bit larger as well, and then perhaps we want to change the line style to be a step effectively. Similar like this. So you see, a lot of familiar options of a Vizlib line chart as well introduced in the combo chart, such as here as well the line style to make it dashed. But one thing that's interesting is here, right? We're looking sales versus sales goal, and these are two bar charts, which are okay, which are great, but they're not so easy to compare. So one thing that you can do is you can take sales goal and then represent it as a symbol, right? As a symbol here, and immediately transforms into an icon. And we can go into our selection of icons here, and you have 594 to choose from, right? So I'm sure you'll find one thing that suits your use case, such as, for example, here, the bullseye, right? So you put it in there, and then let's make it perhaps a little bit larger, like this, and perhaps a different color, so it's not red. It doesn't look so nice on top of a gray background. So choosing here, let's say whites to give it a contrast, right? And you slowly see how effectively you can use a combo chart to then display sales versus sales goals and number of customers. And the good thing, as always, is we also support alternative dimensions. So if you want to have something with a higher granularity, let's say how did our sales perform versus different subgroups. So you can define this as an alternative dimension, which appears here with a +1. And if you change this, you can on the fly rearrange this, and then effectively then see how things are performing over a set. And again, one thing that I personally always disliked in the mini chart option within Qonnections was that there's no way to deactivate it. So it's always there, and it takes up real estate, and secondly, you lose the whole glance of the whole data set. So again, this is Vizlib. So you see on the right-hand side, you can remove the auto scroll preview and then ultimately have everything in one glance in your view. Up to you, but and ultimately that's what we effectively introduce you to, and then you can change the bar width, add some radius around it, lots of formatting options, but on the combo chart style. Of course, you can also change the orientation. You can make this a horizontal combo chart, change the direction top to bottom. Again, it's all about being able to take off all the use cases that have been coming from user bases who have been using extensively Excel, and they want to migrate to Qonnections, but they couldn't so far. So a small walkthrough of some of the options, but this is a cool example that we've created. For those of you who like to use the combo chart with more advanced settings, one thing that we always also added is you can add data points here and then add tooltips into the data points, which are driven by HTML. So you can add images, for example, here in the various data point that can include more information around what's actually been happening around what you're currently visualizing. Very, very, very powerful, and you have a lot of formatting options. You can achieve any look and feel you effectively want using HTML and CSS. And yeah, a quick glance of the example app, you can download it, it's readily available for you, so you can remove the axis, you can change the direction, play around with the colors. Oh, here's HTML tooltip again. Yeah, so you see here that it's actually, you can embed different kind of images or videos if you wanted to. Really, really interesting, especially if you want to perhaps, embed a different CRM system, right? Or for example, embed, let's say, Salesforce indirectly in Qonnections whenever somebody hovers over the tooltip. And we have heat maps. And yeah, give it a go, explore it. I mean, it's a combo chart. Most of you have already used the combo chart, so it shouldn't require lots of explanation. But powerful formatted formatting rich combo chart in Qonnections has been missing, and we hope that we've closed the gap now with it. So yeah, feedback always welcome. Give it a spin. And with this, excited to go and discuss about the next kind of object. So this was the combo chart released mid-January, and about less than 4 weeks later, we have today released, we'll be releasing the Vizlib slider. So the Vizlib slider is a control component. For those of you who've been using Vizlib extensively, we also do extensions which are there to improve the user experience, such as a slider allowing you to set a variable or a date or a range of variables, and to use this either to set some values on the dashboard or to do a sensitivity analysis and whatnot. I mean, sliders are very, very often used on web pages, but yeah, I'm very excited to have Piers actually on the call who will be able to walk you through it. It's his first baby that he's releasing, so I'm handing over to him now.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Martin, for that. I'm just going to share my screen. All good. Everyone can see my screen. So this is the highly anticipated Vizlib slider. And a lot of the features in the Vizlib slider have come from ClickView and also other features that we have included as well. So some of our own, including the Vizlib actions. So I'm going to start from the Vizlib slider wizard, and I'm going to create a variable. Call it my var test. And I instantaneously have a slider to play with. So I'm going to play around with some of the options in the property panel. I'm going to start with a few of these presets. You can see that I can go through the menu and change the look and feel of sorry, there's an issue with the microphone then. And I'm going to continue going through the property panel, and I will open the slider settings pane and change to a range. So I'm going to select another variable. You can see that the slider has changed. I can click inside the range and drag both variables at the same time. I can drag them independently as well, and I can play with that, and that can influence my application. So there's a lot of solid color there, a lot of purple. So I'm going to change some of the colors here. Maybe I want to make the bar square, or make the bar colors something different. So you can see that now I have changed the height of the bar and the selected area to blue. Cool. So I'm going to take you through some of the example app now. Here are all the views of the presets here. So all of these presets do support the range mode. You can see that the selected color is different to the remaining color, enabling you to always see where you are in your app. We have a few different views here, so it's completely customizable. We have scales, and you can customize those with, you can change the font color, scale color, you can add icons as well. Let's go to the next tab. So the customization in the Vizlib slider is huge. It's better than ever. And you can see that here we have a nice fun Pac-Man style slider, just to show off the customization capabilities that we have included in the Vizlib slider. And there is a custom HTML capabilities. There's an action, which I have just triggered, which takes me to the Vizlib community. GIFs can be included using the custom HTML functionality. And this slider here can be controlled by the other sliders by changing the RGB values, where I can customize whichever color I want. And this can be used in different charts to change different variables, controls, and change the color based on user preferences. So in this next tab, well, what I'm going to do is control how my data is visualized based on this slider. So you can see that I'm changing the fruit selected, changing the data points, and this is changing color, changing the focus of the data to my favorite fruit. So that's a demonstration of application control and using data. And of course, the Vizlib slider supports Vizlib actions. You can see that as I drag and drop the slider here and change the range, you can see it's changing the values in the chart. And another example of the range slider here, also changing the values inside donut chart. So you can see there's loads of different use cases here, controlling the application. You can conduct sensitivity analysis. You can adjust your KPI targets in here. You can create ranges for analysis. And more importantly, the Vizlib slider has all of the features from the ClickView slider. Great.
Cool. Thank you very much, Piers, for that. Very, very excited to hear the last comment that you made, which was ClickView slider, right? So lots of us are ClickView developers, so if you use ClickView extensively, and the slider has always been one of the most favorite objects there to allow you to do those kind of sensitivity analysis use cases. And yeah, finally introduced also in ClickSense. So ClickView Hearts beating faster, hopefully. And yeah, that'll be available to do as version 1 this afternoon. So give it a spin. Very keen to hear your feedback. And as always, remember this version 1. We have version 2 coming very soon with also a vertical mode of the slider. So, and again, to include any other feedback that you guys might bring to the table. So we're very excited to hear that. Right. So these are 2 new extensions that were released in the last 6 weeks. So and this is just kind of to show, you know, I think we discussed it back in December. We have been ramping up the development team. Vizlib Pollen was created, and the speed has picked up, right? So we are releasing things much faster. We're doing lots of development in parallel, and all, of course, to the benefit of Vizlib users, effectively. So it's not just been 2 extensions. However, as always, we have also been working on existing visualizations and existing charts, in particular the community favorites, the Vizlib Pivot and straight tables. And whereas, you know, you can think how much more can you improve a table? It's just a table. Trust me, the feedback we get from you is tremendous, and we have so many creative new ideas on how to extend it and add more capabilities to it. So what we introduced to the Vizlib Pivot Table and straight table are there, for example, Vizlib actions. tooltips on cell levels, so similar to the combo chart that I've just shown, vertical column orientation on the pivot table, and the color mix function on the pivot table, which allows you with just one click expression to turn your pivot table into a heat map. And for this, I'm handing over to David, Vizlib's CTO, who will give you a walkthrough through some of these changes. 1 second, let's make sure I'll make your presenter, David.
Cool. Can you hear me, guys? Okay, yeah. Perfect. And you can see my screen as well, right? Cool. Yeah, thank you for that, Martin. Really interesting. And also thank you, Pierce, the slider. I think it's one of those extensions that it will unveil a lot of functionalities and a lot of, it will improve the user experience in the dashboards, since it's extremely customizable and you can fulfill different use cases. So yeah, as the guys mentioned, looking forward for your feedback, guys, and see how you are using it. So having said that, I wanted to share some of the new features and updates that we've got within the Vizlib table and the Vizlib Pivot Table. And one of them is actions. So actions on a table, it's a recurring kind of a feature request that we had almost since we released the Vizlib table. So I would like to walk you through an actual use case of it, or a real example. So we have this really nice Vizlib table with bullet charts, where we support HTML support, so that's why we can have these flags there, and also many charts. But then what we want to actually do is we want to apply a selection, and then we want to go to, or we want to navigate to a different sheet. So this is the perfect use case for that. So that's why we introduced the actions. So if I click here in Italy, what actually happens is that it's taking me to the details sheet. And from here, I applied the selection. So now we selected Italy for the country dimension. And here I can see all the details. And then maybe I want to go back and clear that selection, right? So that's a perfect example of how actions can help you to improve that navigation and user experience with your dashboards. So now let's have a look at it, how I did that. So as usual, we try to make this as seamless and easy as possible within our property panel. And that's why what we did is we just added at the very bottom, like on the Vizlib API designer, for example, we have a similar functionality also in the text object and so on. So here, what we actually have is we have an array. We can create an array of actions. So that means that you can only not run one action, but you can run as many as you want. So you can just click here in that, and then you can select the type of action. So we have selecting field, excluded, possible, activate variable, open a URL, you name it. So we have a lot of possible actions here. And again, this is an array, so we can run more than one. But in this case in particular that I showed you before, what we did is we just went to activate sheet, and we went to the details. And that's it, as simple as that. And I think it's really rich. It can take the dashboard to a different level from the user perspective. Just a minor update on the Vizlib table as well. We introduced the ability to have a vertical alignment on cells. I think that's interesting to mention. So for example, here on that year-to-date measure, I think it's this one, you can actually see how we can align this at the top or at the bottom or center. So this might sound silly, but in some cases, especially if you use HTML in your cells, that could actually save you a headache. So there is that. Another exciting stuff that we release, it's on the Vizlib Pivot Table. So the Vizlib Pivot Table is great. So it does its job, right? So you can have different level, different dimensions, and multiple measures, of course. We also have our alternative selector where we can remove or add rows, columns, in an easier and in a easy to use way. But one of the things that we kind of feel it was missing, and it actually came from our customers as well, is it's great. You can have a lot of columns, but it kind of looks a little bit cluttered together, right? So you might just want to have some of these columns vertical. So that's why we decided to, again, based on that customer feedback, to provide the ability to have vertical labels. So with one simple click here, I'm going to the product group. So this column here, I can just click on vertical, and now all of a sudden it flipped. But what we actually did as well is we introduced it to the ability to have some custom row height. So now I can manually increase this. So I could even have another dimension underneath with a total different settings. So maybe the second dimension, I want it to be horizontal. And actually, that's a valid use case. So let's just prove it. So if I expand that here, I have it in horizontal, but the dimension above is in vertical. So we can have these vertical cells for the columns. So this is that. I think it's really exciting, and it can actually help you to save a lot of real estate in your pivot table. So taking the UX again into a different level. Another thing that we're requested to implement, and we actually did it, is the ability to have the color mix function support within our Vizlib Pivot Table. Maybe that's kind of a too techy jargon, but that effectively translates to being able to have some sort of a heat map in the Vizlib Pivot Table. So in the background color of the measure, we can actually now run this function, which is the color mix function, which basically, in a nutshell, what it does is it interpolates a value between two colors. So this is red and green, and then this is the sales amount, and then we get the total, we divide it, we get a value between 0 and 1, and then that value goes between red and green. And effectively what it does is it just converts into a heat map. So now we just took our Vizlib Pivot Table, which was really cool, and we just take it to the next level. So now it's even a heat map as well. So we can actually expand this, and now at a glance, we can see what country for what customer has more sales. And then we can, of course, apply selections, navigate to it, as you would expect with any other Vizlib object. So that kind of a persist. And lastly, another feature that we also implemented on the pivot table that was available on the Vizlib table is the ability to have custom HTML on a cell level for both columns and for both dimensions and measures. So you actually probably saw that when I was covering here, but what we can actually do is we can just cover one of these cells and we can embed HTML. So HTML might sound too technical, but it's actually really cool because it allows you to implement whatever you can imagine in a way. So for example, here, I'm just hovering over a cell, and then yeah, I can just put a picture of someone, right? So this type of capabilities are also available with a combo chart, bar chart, and line chart, I believe, where you can actually hover over a certain data point, and then leveraging HTML, you can just show images, GIFs, any type of a custom styling that you might have. Yeah, I think that's really cool. So you can actually find this setting here on the data section for both measures and dimensions. At the very bottom, we have this tooltip. So by default, it's gonna probably be disabled. So basically what's happened when it's disabled is that we show the native tooltip from the browser. But if you enable, then you have two options. You have the auto. So basically it's the same, but nicely formatted. And then you have this custom. So just as an idea, so you can see how that looks like, what I did is I use HTML, this B tag, it's for bold, and then this is the underline. Hey, we're using HTML, and then we are embedding an image. And basically this, what it does is it connects to this kind of a website that generates random face, which is Creative Commons, so that's good. And then we randomly just get a picture of someone, a man, woman, and we just inject that on the cell level. So I think that's pretty much it from my side. I'm gonna be in the background, guys. So if you have any questions, please feel free just to raise it here. And Piers and myself, we're gonna be answering all of them. And as Martin mentioned, also at the end of the session, we're gonna have a Q&A. So all yours, Martin. Thank you, guys.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, David. That was very, very exciting. And as always, continuing our ideas and development on the pivot and straight table, especially the capability with a tooltip where you can embed HTML. So if you are, for example, thinking single configurator, you can easily also integrate click charts directly in the tooltip, right? And I think some of the click pre-sales people who are on this call, their heart will start beating faster because you can now actually build some really, really cool POCs that can, beat Tableau on so many different levels, because these things are not possible in Tableau. So But very, very excited. So this is already available for you guys to use it. Even like simple stuff like color mix, combining clicks, rich list of expressions, and leveraging that to transform the pivot table heat map, can make a really, really big difference. But that's the exciting thing around the pivot and the straight table. We obviously did a couple of more kind of updates and individual chart releases. As always, you'll be able to find them on our vizlib.com/blog website. So you can see here a collection of all the individual chart features that have been released, such as on the Vizlib filter, on the line chart, and many more kind of extensions. But more interesting is now, the future. So obviously, the team size at Vizlib is increasing. The development speed is increasing. So we want to be able to develop new things faster and quicker. And as always, the focus in the past year has been a lot on, turning out extensions. If we look back at 2018, we've done some really, really good progress by releasing some key runners such as the Vizlib KPI object, the combo chart, the pivot table was released last year, the container, some really, really powerful objects. We'll of course continue with the same kind of principles, so adding new extensions to the library. So you can see here at the top of the screen, we've released 19 extensions, so Vizlib Slider being the latest one in the mix. And yeah, what is coming next? What's coming soon? So one key element is here the waterfall extension. We're fully aware there is a waterfall chart available in Qonnections natively. However, based on feedback that we've received from you guys and that we know, there's more that can be done. So one thing is to be able to use the waterfall chart and pivot it against a dimension to see, how the various dimension values are contributing to the totals in a nice waterfall way. And plus also around, using multiple measures. There have been some use cases, especially within finance departments, that, we want to be able to tackle. So the waterfall chart is the next extension that we'll be working on. We will, as always, do a beta call where every 2 weeks we'll be showing you the progress and have some of our key Vizlib champions from our existing customer base join the call, give their feedback, and help influence the guideline and the direction of the waterfall chart. A Meko chart has always been on our list, so that will be done in 2019. Also, a filter pane where you have, a collection, a collection set of filters and date pickers that are consistent across the sheet that can be shown and hidden in the filter in the dashboard is also on our roadmap as an enrichment of the Vizlib sheet menu, for example, and to give people the ability to achieve to display dashboards more and more as mashups or similar to mashups by inheriting some of those capabilities that are typically only available in Mashup, but within Qonnections. At the same time, we also have two very important upgrades on the existing libraries, such as the Vizlib Container version 2. This, at the moment, you can only show and hide one object at a time within the Vizlib container, which is great, does the job, takes off lots of use cases. But one thing that we want to introduce is being able to show two objects at the same time. So show and hide two container objects within one container tile, or more than that in form of a grid line. So the Vizlib grid mode will be introduced to Vizlib Container version 2. We're already working on it, and I think that'll be a very interesting addition to it, especially because we know that people are using Vizlib Container extensively. Vizlib Filter also will be developed continuously. We will continue development on it this year. Especially, we're going to turn out a version 3 of it, which will be around a hierarchical Vizlib filter. So, the way that sometimes you have dimensions that are interrelated in a hierarchical way. So you have parents and children. So we want to be able to allow you to add more than one dimension and have almost like a pivot table expand and collapse way to view filter values in a much more intuitive way. Something that, for example, was available in ClickView, but we want to introduce in Qonnections. So hierarchical view in a Vizlib table, Vizlib filter is something that we'll be working on. I know some of you are already using a similar extension, open source one, so we definitely see the need in this. And it's also because Vizlib filter is one of the most used objects out there, right? So as always, we will improve our existing library. So that's a little bit, what we are looking at in the next kind of 4 or 5 months on the Vizlib library as individual extension additions. But more, or perhaps at this point, I've prepared a tiny poll around the next Vizlib extension in line. So I already mentioned that we're looking or eyeing at the waterfall chart, but as I also said, is that we'll be working on multiple extensions at the same time. So what I'd like to do here now is actually get your opinion, get your vote, and see what you guys think should be the next extension in line. So I've just launched a poll. You have one vote, pick one of the 5 next kind of extension or roadmap, and cast your vote what you think would be very, very valuable or more valuable. I see votes are being casted here. We have about almost half of the people on the call who've raised their voice. Very, very interestingly, the results look different to 2 months ago. Whereas the waterfall chart has always been a key contender, things are changing now. Okay, I'm gonna give it another 10 seconds. Click on the choice that you want to see, and I'll display the results shortly. In 3, 2, 1, brilliant. All right, closing the polls now, and I'm sharing the results. Cool, so that's interesting to see. So yeah, the hierarchical filter display for the Vizlib filter, so version 3 is actually very sought after. And the waterfall chart, whereas it has always been at the top in the past few months, most wanted extension has now actually dropped. So okay, it's good to know. Good to know. That's why these calls are very helpful to us as well. So fantastic around that. Now, however, this is the Vizlib library roadmap, right? Like new extensions. And at the same time, one feedback that we got is, right, Vizlib, do you have any sort of big news coming out? Are you going to be working on something bigger than just new extensions all the time? And the answer to this is, of course, we want to. And now we have the capabilities and the capacity to do so. So these are some of our thoughts that we have been starting to writing down in the past couple of weeks. It's not yet set in stone, but pretty much like 80% of what we want to do in the next 12 months. So first of all, very important, we want to be introducing Vizlib library updates beyond just individual extensions, such as click theming support. I think that's been long overdue. Theming was introduced last year in February 2018, and first of all, we wanted to see how people are using it, if they're using it at all, and we saw our existing customer base taking and leveraging themes. So this is something that we will now, of course, support as we support any other Qonnections capability, such as printing or story mode and more. So that's something that we'll be working on. Very important is component presets, right? So you've seen today at the Vizlib slider that we have a collection of presets that are effectively pre-configuring your chart in a specific coloring design that has been defined by us, right? The same presets are also available in the KPI object. So if I use a KPI object, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, you will see here that you can, of course, create the KPI from scratch, or you can use one of the available presets here that ultimately just generates a KPI for you. Now, this is very, very handful because it allows you to quickly generate a chart which looks nice. However, at the moment, it's fixed, right? So these presets have been created by us. They're available to everyone. But the next step would be to allow you to create your own company presets and modify these ones here. So, for example, remove all the kind of presets that were generated, the generic ones, and replace them with your branded, specified company presets to ensure that every other developer on your Qonnections server will be able to use the same consistent style of KPI objects that you as an administrator defined. So that's something that we will that we want to offer to give you the ability to save, configure, and then expose company presets across your Qonnections environment. And I think that'll be a very interesting feature. Of course, as always, and I think it's important to highlight this, is continuous performance improvements, right? So we are consistently improving and optimizing our extension library. The Vizlib Pivot Table and the Vizlib Filter and the scatter chart actually have gone several performance improvements in the past three months, and we won't stop. So we will continuously monitor it, especially in Internet Explorer. So expect lots of updates around that aspect. Performance is key, shouldn't be compromised, and we appreciate this. So this is something that we work it almost with a dedicated task force within our development team. So this is on our radar. Now, for 2019, we are also looking at new products, new kind of extensions, not extensions, but new capabilities that go perhaps beyond the Vizlib library. And one thing that we have been coining here very often is commentary, right? So that's something that we will call Vizlib collaboration. And Vizlib collaboration is going to be effectively a capability where users can add comments, annotation, notes on Vizlib extensions. And with this, write back and also communicate with other users on Vizlib charts. So think on it a little bit like Facebook, but obviously on your dashboards, with commentary and annotations being the most important kind of aspects. Because one thing is that the challenge has always been that on Qonnections dashboards, you're always by yourself. So you get a read-only view, but what if you have an insight? How do you share this, right? And if you need to take a screenshot or need to print it to PDF, send it via email, have a conversation. And however, we want to be able to enable you to have that conversation within Qonnections on top of your live data. So this is something that we have teamed up with 3 key customers who have expressed interest, and they'll be also dedicating resources to test this functionality. Luckily, both from healthcare, telecommunications, and financial services, so it's very, very versatile, our user base. So this is something that we're working on, and hopefully by Qonnections, we'll be able to present an MVP for you guys. Another very important topic are Vizlib actions. You're aware we already have Vizlib actions in our extensions and our objects, but we want to extend that. So we have received a lot of requests such as, all right, I want to have a new action, such as posting a request or an adjustment to Salesforce. So this is something that we want to spend time working on and make it more interactive. And as you know, Vizlib actions are something that can be used across the whole set of the library, you know, either on the Vizlib table, on the Vizlib slider. So these things will be effectively available across the whole set. And one thing that is actually very important that is more from management purposes is a Vizlib QMC. So at the moment, as a customer, you're probably aware you need to go to our website, you need to log in, you need to sign in, download the extensions, you need to have a shared account. So what we want to do is we want to give you the ability to manage your extensions directly from Qonnections. So you'll have a separate page that'll be for extensions and Vizlib extensions as well, and give you a better overview of which extensions are installed, which versions, which apps they are being used at. Obviously, if that's being hosted on your Qonnections server, there's more insight to be gained. So, and that will hopefully, you know, ease the administration, but also the release and the updating of individual extensions for your Qonnections environment. So these are some key topics that we'll be working on. Vizlib collaboration, the most important contender. I think this can almost be, you know, a game changer in itself. But yeah, we will explore that functionality and do it step by step. And obviously, as always, be releasing MVPs as and when they are ready to see and how people are using it and, you know, liking it ultimately. So, conscious of time, with this, yeah, handing over to you guys and see if you have any questions. Oops. Opening it now. And don't forget, you have the ability to go through. On the right-hand side, there is a list of questions that you can post. Right, so here's one question. I think this will be directed to David, but on Pivot Table, when hovering over cells, can you render a chart, like a pie chart? And David, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. Hello, Steve. Yes, you can. So effectively, since we support HTML, what you could effectively do is you could just use the single configurator and then get a URL and just embed that inside. Yeah. So effectively, whatever it's possible to be rendered with HTML, that should be, you should be able to do it in the tooltip. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, you can just send an email to support@vizlib.com, and yeah, any of you guys actually, and we can take it from there as well.
Okay, another question is around allowing user preferences to be set and saved and shared. And I think we will kind of have two levels. So obviously, one thing is what we call the company presets, right? So giving you the ability as a developer to go create your KPI, your slider, your sheet menu. And if you like the style that you've generated, save it down, and then ultimately define it as a new preset that is then made available to other developers when they're starting and develop their apps. So that's something that is on the roadmap. Now, another thing that we're working on the pivot table, as a matter of fact, is the ability to save a configuration. So the pivot table is being used heavily a lot of times to slice and dice the data, explore the data set, and ultimately drill down and export this even to Excel, right? So what we've introduced here, that you can see on my screen, is the ability to use alternative dimension and measures. So you can rearrange the rows, make them columns, put the measures here. You can add more measures on the fly, and that ultimately generates your pivot table as you would do it with an Excel. Now, one thing that we want to do is we want to be able to save these views. So as a Martin personal favorite, all right, this is the Martin view. Save it, and then tell my colleague Piers when he goes into the dashboard to be able to have a drop down here to say, all right, let me open up Martin's view, and then click on this, and then you get the same shared view of the pivot table. So that's also something that we are working on this capability. A very interesting question is if an email can be triggered from a Vizlib extension when, for example, a threshold has exceeded. So let me answer the question how I feel, how I understand it, right? So obviously your data changes only when a reload is being made, right? So you can easily put in the script, you can put in a trigger that if the values of your data has exceeded a certain threshold, you can then execute an email sending script, for example. So that's typically best handled and managed in the load editor, right, and not necessarily with an extension on the front end. However, at the same time, one thing that you can do is then that's where we're looking at actions, right? So perhaps you've made some selections in your data set, you're happy with what you see, there are certain thresholds that have been achieved or have been exceeded, and you want to send that information as an alert via email, right? And at the moment, our actions are limited in a way that you can reload an app, you can set a variable, making a selection, typically within the Click framework. We want to introduce actions such as, send an email to a user, for example, or send an email body or similar. So to ultimately cater for use cases where if somebody sees something and click on it and then ultimately notify somebody else. And that's stuff that we want to work on with Vizlib Actions, as I mentioned here, and make this available for the rest of our library ultimately. So I hope that at least the question goes in one direction. one thing that is kind of important to me is, as always, don't hesitate reaching out to us. Send us an email if you have ideas, if you have more requests. We are obviously here to help us. We appreciate obviously your time that you spend on Vizlib, either by creating example apps to help us understand what you're after. But we like having that conversation, really close relationship with you guys. So don't be shy. Just send an email to support@vizlib.com, and we'll have somebody from the team answer hopefully those questions. One interesting thing is around actions, right? So these will be now more meaningfully be introduced in many more extensions, such as, for example, Vizlib filter, right? So let me quickly open that up, right? So for example, here you can add region name here, and I have it look at very powerful extension because you can have default values, default selections, but also actions, right? So for example, if somebody makes a selection and region name, you can then use the actions on the right-hand side to go to a different sheet. So what I'm going to do here is if I click on or make a selection like central, it will then take me to a different sheet. So you can combine it now with different kind of interactions, which may or may not make your dashboard much more user-friendly. Again, this will only work, however, in like Sense, not on mashups, because you don't have sheet navigation in mashups. But in mashups, you can perhaps use opening URLs. Cool. I think, yeah, any other questions that have been posed we try to answer them. So with this, I see we're running out of time. Yeah, as always, download the combo chart, the slider, they're available to you, and give us your feedback. And we, look forward to speaking to you in a month's time when we'll be discussing the latest changes again on a webinar like today. Thank you very much for attending. The call was recorded and will be made available on YouTube. So if you have a colleague where you want to pinpoint them to something that was shown today, you can happily do so. This will be made available to you in the next 24 hours. Thank you very much for attending, and speak to you soon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.